Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet, and I'm in Burrowing, New South Wales, Australia. It is Monday morning here, and I'm very pleased to have my guest all the way from Florida in the United States, where it is Sunday evening, Dr. Alan Stern. Dr. Alan Stern, welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Good to have you.
Hey, David, it is so great to be with you. We've met a few times. We've had some great conversations. And to be sitting here with the likes of you is an honor, a privilege, and an awful lot of fun. So thank you so much.
No, it's great. It's great to actually sit down and spend the next 45 to 60 minutes just chatting about your journey through dentistry, because I know that you have had some experiences that a lot of dentists will recognize as similar to what they've had, and sharing that journey and where you are now and what you're doing now as well. So, Alan, you're right. We met in person maybe 8 or 9 years ago in the Midwest, or was it in the desert?
Yeah. Yeah.
At a dental speakers conference. You were just beginning your speaking career, and I'd been speaking for about that time, about 5 or 6 years. And those were great conferences. But you and I have recently reconnected because of a mutual friend, somebody who's already been a guest on my podcast, and that's Dr. Bob Pick, and he's a great guy. But Alan, let's talk about you and your story, because it's similar to mine, just a few extra years here and there in terms of your journey. You were a dentist for a long time with a practice on the Jersey Shore. Yes. You were born and raised in New York, educated in Virginia, and ended up on the Jersey Shore, and now retired to Florida. So tell us about. Let's start by talking about your journey from childhood to becoming a dentist, and how was that for you? Because some people have a saloon passage, but I don't believe your father, or there was no familial dentist in your family. Is that correct?
No. I was the first. Actually, my late uncle was the only member of my family before me to earn a college degree. Passed away very young, but I was the first to get through college and, of course, dental school. I was raised in Queens, New York. And, we go into dental school. It's a very interesting journey, David. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Getting into dental school is very competitive. And here's the dirty truth. Don't tell anybody, David. This is a secret between you and me, that I got rejected by 23 medical schools. I was supposed to be a doctor. So nice son of a Jewish mother. He's going to be a doctor, right? Life doesn't begin until you get out of med school. But I didn't get in. And I languished for a couple of years, languished in a retail store. Luckily, my closest high school friend's father was my dentist. And I wouldn't say encouraged me, he kind of smacked me in the head and said, watch me do dentistry. It's great. I'm having a lot of fun. Come to my office. And I shadowed Dr. Bob. And I saw that you could really have a good life do great things for people, have fun, and be loved by your community. It's exactly what I was looking for. So I got into dental school, and it took me 2 applications to do that. And, I don't know how dental education is down in Australia, but here it can be construed, it can be taken by susceptible people as an assault on your self-esteem. And there's a subliminal message that we got back in the day, and it's still, my understanding is it's still out there, that if your work isn't perfect, it's no good. And if your work's no good, you're no good. That's what happens to emotionally susceptible people. And David, parenthetically, that is not an indictment on dental education, because back in the 70s, they did not know any better. That's just the way it was. And all of this emotional trauma and burnout and all these other things are just coming to light in the last 10 or 15 years. So back in the 70s, they had no idea that they were doing something that was destructive. That was not their intent. Just didn't know. But I got out with very, very poor self-esteem, very poor self-efficacy. And I spent a lot of time trying to prove myself and be something that I wasn't. I spent a ton of money that I did not have with the wrong advisors, the wrong consultants, the wrong coaches. Found myself $250,000 in debt in my late 40s and early 50s. And oh my goodness gracious, what will I do? I had bought a house, a very lovely house, because, I'm Dr. Alan Stern. I deserve a house. I bought a Lexus because I'm practicing dentist. I'm a big deal. And I had a radio spot every Tuesday morning. I had a live radio spot marketing my practice, and they'd bring me as a guest to have a little fun because I love joking around. It was great, but it cost me a fortune. And I had to sell the house. I had to give up the radio. I kept the Lexus. That's something for it. But we regrouped and we rolled up our sleeves. We did what we had to do. And all of a sudden, we had cash and we had money to save. And we started saving again. And here I am, better, richer, and stronger. I thought I was a loser. I thought I had nothing going for me. And at the end of the day, at the end of my career, my colleagues are calling me a legend. I still don't believe that. But we did a whole lot of good, not even knowing how much good we're doing. And I think we lose perspective of that, David. I think every one of us, wherever you are on the food chain of dentistry, whether you're in public health, whether you're in a PPO practice, whether you're in the highest AACD or Pankey Spear course, all of these things are fantastic. But every single one of us is doing sacred work, doing work that nobody else can do. And the sooner we realize it as dentists, the sooner we realize that we are special, that we have come through a tremendous education process, and that we are here to do great work and are doing great work in the world, that's when magic happens. The other thing that's very important to understand is that you don't have to be a Pankey master or a Coyce master or a Frank Spear master in order to be a great dentist. I think it's very important to know who you are, what you're looking to do with your dental career, whose lives you want to touch, what you love doing, what you're curious about doing more of, and what you don't want to do. And if you don't have the skill or the patience with a CE or the wherewithal to do that really amazing work that Pankey, Spear, Coyce, AACD, and so on and so forth do, that it's okay. You focus on your niche. You focus on every human being that comes into your office, make their life better somehow. And that's what turned it around for me. When I shed the beast of debt, when I sold that house, when I gave up some of the expensive things that weren't doing me as much good as they should, learned that life goes on and that I can live my best life without them, yeah, that's when
So
magic happens.
that's a great journey, Alan, and I'm I know you're telling me this story, it's there are a lot of similarities to my own journey,
Yes.
in terms of changing the direction that I was heading, assuming that it was the right direction and realizing that it wasn't, and then changing to a different direction, which was, getting the roadmap, getting the roadmap that I needed. In my case, um, I was doing things without advice. The first person who began to advise me was a nightmare, but the second coach that I had dramatically helped me focus on what I needed to do. And I had that coach for 6.5 years, and was able to triple my practice. But in that time, um, like your story, I sold my family home because there was too much. I had too much equity in that home, but I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
cash that I needed for my business. And so my story was that I said to my wife, 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, we need to sell our family home and go rent for 5 years, and that's a big decision for a homebody mother to have to make. And I told you, how proud before we came on air, how proud my wife is of our current home. But it was, at the end of that 5 years, we had then bought and built a new home as well. So it was the right decision. So I was going to ask you this. You said that you had some bad advice and you made some bad decisions. Did you come to a realization on your own that you needed to do something and you knew what to do, or did you get advice that gave you the new direction?
Well, it took me a while. It took me $250,000 of debt to realize that something was wrong. I learned slow, but I learned, David. But the truism that was told to me at the Pankey Institute. By the way, I am who I am largely because of the Pankey Institute and a handful of other people. Um, that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I'm sitting around, and we had just been through management consultant who it didn't work. It cost us a fortune. Marketing consultant, oh my goodness, just it was Napoleon and Waterloo. And the financial planner who also didn't get it done. And for a while there, we sat around, my wife and me, and said, no more consultants. They robbed us blind. Um, and then all of a sudden, I'm listening to a podcast, and I hear this woman, a practice management coach named Marilee Sears, who is a dear friend. She's old enough to be my daughter, and I treat her like my daughter now, and she kind of looks at me as a dad. And she really rescued our practice. She got us to where we need to be. She got me believing in myself again. And the student was ready. The teacher appeared. I ran into one of my Pankey colleagues at the Greater New York meeting shortly afterwards, and he gave me the name of a financial advisor. That financial advisor who told me to sell my house. I listened. My wife listened. We cried for a while, but life got comfortable. And then I found my calling, David, when I realized that there were so many people like me out there, so many people who were carrying burdens and trying to be something that they aren't, and being disappointed that they aren't this and they aren't that. And then I found a colleague who committed suicide over the imperfect world she was living in. I realized that my calling is to help other dentists do what I did, and not only crack the code of living well and being comfortable, but also crack the code of being happy as a dental practitioner. Because the last 10 or 12 years of my career were happy, not stress-free, but damn, I was happy doing it.
Mm.
And there is happiness to be had in dentistry. There is reward, there's spiritual and material reward in what we do. We just have to manage ourselves appropriately and get clear on what we do and do not want to do, what we are and aren't willing and able to do in order to get something. David, you and I, we occupy a very, very blessed position in this profession. We are able to guide others in our respective areas of expertise. But people can sometimes think that, we're sitting on top of the world here, and we're sipping mint juleps on in the back, and being fanned by fig leaves and being fed grapes off the vine. And that's not life. Our lives are imperfect. We have needs and wants. We all have limitations. And no matter what any dentist sees, and this is the lesson, the big lesson that I learned after I recovered, was I have more than most people could ever have in the world, and I have less than some. Get over it. And no matter what I see, if I see somebody with a big practice, a McMansion, a bigger Lexus than mine, I have no idea what price that individual is paying for it or has paid for it. And I do not know whether I was willing or able to pay that price. So you're exactly where you want to be, where you're supposed to be. If you want to bump it up a notch, evaluate what you have to do to get there. And those teachers, those coaches, those advisors taught me that. So mine was a process of discovering Alanism number 18, number 20. Nobody gets there alone. Nobody. The finest athletes, the finest performers, the slimiest politicians. I mean, the great leaders in the world, they all have coaches, handlers, and advisors. We're no different.
Mm.
We're no different.
Yes. A good friend of mine who was a dental coach and lived in Cleveland, he used to tell me, none of us are smarter than all of us.
Yes.
And, we do need to listen to other people's advice. Whether we choose to use it is one thing, because we also know dentists who they're just advice collectors and they never take action on anything. And of course, their feet are firmly planted on the ground because they're not moving anywhere. And I think that's the important thing and from your story is that you recognise the problem, you acknowledge the problem, and then you said, well, this is what we've got to do. And you found the advisors that you need. And I know Marilee Spears. I met her online. I'm just trying to think, maybe 7 years ago. Yes.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she's a wonderful person. She's a really wonderful person.
I call her my guardian angel.
Mm. Yeah. No. She's a really cool person. And
Yeah.
so, you're right. It's just, as you told me earlier, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And you've got to find that. My first coach was a nightmare. I was basically counting cotton rolls. I'm going, this is not what it's meant to be about. And and I actually ended up in a legal battle with him because I just said, this is not where I'm meant to be. But my second coach was the answer. And he had some very hard truths in terms of, and simple, blunt ways of saying things, but one of the bits of advice that I can remember leaving my practice to go to an afternoon meeting with him, just him and me and his offsider, and I bumped into my neighbour in my building. There was another practice next door to me in my building, and I was bumped into him at we call them lifts, you call them elevators,
Yes.
at the lift door. And I said to my neighbour, I said, because he was older than me, I said, that wasn't your practice listed for sale in the the Sydney Morning Herald newspaper, because that's how people used to sell back in the
Mhm.
1990s. And he goes, as a matter of fact, it was. So I get to my coach meeting and I say, oh, by the way, I just bumped into my next door neighbours and he's selling his practice. And my coach just went, all right, let's talk about you buying that practice, because this is where you're going to make money, because he has a great practice base and you're going to incorporate him into your office until he's
Mhm.
ready to retire. And we did that for, he worked for me for a year. And from that practice, in the 10 years, the first 10 years that I owned his practice and incorporated into my practice, $1 million of dentistry was done in that time. And he was a good dentist. He didn't overservice, though we did have a joke in my office that every patient that he saw in that year that he stayed with me got their farewell crown. But other than that, I never had to redo his work,
Yeah.
and it was a big turning point in my career, getting that coach's advice. The teacher was there when I was ready to learn, and you know, my,
And
my
the other thing it reminds me of, David, is the great quote from Earl Nightingale, who said, "Luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity."
mm, mm, mm,
Isn't that something? You were prepared. Your eyes were open. It's very important. Our eyes have to be open. But opportunity, all these things are right in front of us. And we just have to really, put that wide angle lens on and just look around. When I hit bottom, when I hit the peak of my frustration, very fortunately out of left field, Marilee Sears appears. And out of that, my coaching endeavor arose. The universe was telling me something. And I think out of every setback, every disaster, every not good thing that doesn't kill you is an opportunity to rise above it all. And I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't want to sound like I'm the all-knowing, grand, high, exalted, mystic ruler of everything, but that is what happened to me. I have a great wife, as you do, David, who supported our wives, supported what we did with 100% enthusiasm and 100%, stood by me. And holy smoke, my story is a miracle.
So
My
your
story.
story is now a book, Alan, too.
And I just have it right here, David.
Better, richer, stronger. Um, Tell me about the writing of the book and why you decided to put it into into words, onto paper, and about the journey in writing a book, because writing a book is hard work.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You want the formal story. You want the real truth behind the book. I'll give you the real truth behind the book.
Yeah, I was going to ask for the real truth.
The real truth. Our good friend Mark LeBlanc.
Yes.
I met Mark at the same time that I met you at Speaking Consulting Network's meeting. And I met him and said, "Hi, how you doing? Nice to meet you." And he got on a webinar with our friend Lois Banta.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard Mark talking about principles of growing your business. Now, at this point, I was in practice, and I decided that my calling is to do what I told you is what I'm doing now. So I gave Mark a call. He listened to me. After about 3 minutes, he had everything all figured out for me. He says, "You're writing a book." I said, "Mark, I got a full-time dental practice. I don't have time." He said, "Write the book." "Mark, I have but so many." He said, "Write the damn book." So I wrote the book, and that's what happened. It was a compilation of blog pieces I had written, and also incorporating my story, my journey from childhood to being a happy practitioner, and some of the lessons that I've learned. And with a very good editor it turned into a very, very nice, easy read, and it's still selling pretty nicely today. It's just, it's an amazing achievement. And I wrote a second little book. I'm working on a third one right now. It's fun. Once you get it done, the end result is just so much fun. It's very rewarding.
So is the book about your story, your journey through life before dentistry, during dentistry? You're obviously writing it while you were still a dentist.
Yes.
It's biographical as opposed to a how-to book?
It's biographical and it's lessons learned. I am not going to teach dentistry. I've been a student of dentistry. I've been one of those guys. I was a very good dentist, but I did not consider myself somebody who could teach technique. I was able to get through practice. I am not a management expert. I do understand the mindset that drive the decisions to prosper in dentistry. So all of the lessons, where I saw myself as extremely flawed. I remember going to a lecture, I think it was from Frank Spear, looking at some of the things that Frank put up. And my thought was, I can't do that. I'll never do that. I might as well give up. And the process that had me turn it around and say to myself, well, maybe I'll never be Frank Spear, but I could take a little bit of what Frank showed us and incorporate it into my repertoire, and he can make me better. I talk about the reward, the spiritual reward, that without it, you can make all the money in the world in dentistry and have a miserable career. Mm. I remember I talk about a lady who was paraplegic, and her husband kept wheeling her in, wheeling her out. Her teeth were, they looked horrible, and she wanted to be able to smile again. And I remember crying when even delivering her temps, her provisionals. She said, "Get my husband in here." And she brought her husband in, and he was thrilled. She said to him, "Jerry, can we drive around town? I just want to go smiling."
Oh, how cool.
And here's a lady who couldn't walk, who was 100% dependent on somebody else moving her around. And all of a sudden, she got a huge boost. And the dentistry was good, and doing the dentistry was great, and I got paid for it. I got paid nicely for it. It paled in comparison to this woman's reaction. But I just made a dent in the quality of her life that nobody else could have done. Those are the kinds of things I talk about. I talked about in dental school, the first words I heard were, "How many of you are married?" And Fran and I had been married for a week. So about 20 of us raised our hand. They said, "Congratulations, dental school is a launch pad for divorce."
Yeah.
Oh. Well, here we are 47 years later. Ha ha. Stories of financial recovery, perspective of what we do, and how to start thinking in a way that will give you a healthy, long, prosperous, wonderful, imperfect career.
Excellent. It's because you've probably heard the phrase regularly in part of your speaking career, and that is that facts tell but stories sell. And so people are going to want to buy your book just to read your stories. People bought my book and said, and I said, it's not a how-to book, but if you went through it with a marker and a highlighter, you'd have, in some chapters, there's 90-something tips, but it's told in an autobiographical conversation as to what we did and why we did it, as opposed to here's how to do a handover. here's how to put cord in.
Yeah.
The comment that you made before about not being that some people have these expectations that these courses that they do will make them a better dentist. I remember having an assistant who also worked for a lecturer on crown and bridge and implant and was a prosthodontist, and she kept telling me, she said, "You pack cord way better than he does." And I go, cool. Yeah, I'm just doing that out in Western Sydney. But
Yeah.
I know you've, yeah, I learned my lesson about packing cord from my employer that I was telling you about beforehand, because he never packed cord right. And while I worked for him for 3 years, the number of times the lab would call him and say, can you take that impression again? I'm going, that's an absolute waste of time. It's nowhere, it's zero customer service. What's the benefit in rushing when you say, I look at it, go, that's not right. We'll just do it again now. And as every dentist knows, the second impression is always easier than the first because it's had that darn impression material in there pushing stuff away for 3 to 5 minutes anyway. So it's a lot easier to do it then than to
Yes. You start
pull
over.
off temporaries. But I
Mhm.
learned that lesson, and I would I would think that less than 3 times in my whole career as a practice owner did I have to retake an impression. Probably less than two. I prided myself on get it right and know it's right.
Mhm.
Um, and of course now it's easy because you just send it
Scanning.
across digitally, scan and go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, try working with
Yeah.
rubber.
Yeah. Or polyvinyl.
Mm,
Yeah. I think one of the things that I realized, and I was more than 2% of retaking impressions. And you have to forgive yourself also. You have to give yourself a little bit of grace because we were talking offline before. If you have to take an impression again, or if the crown doesn't see, oh my God, the crown doesn't see, the world's coming to an end. Oh goodness. Oh my, 6 months later, I take the bite wing and the margin is off. And as we said earlier, what's it going to mean a year from now? You
mm,
just correct the work any way you can. Forgive yourself for being human because we are human before we are dentists, and just make right. It's that
yeah,
simple. You had a talent for getting that impression first time, wham bam. That's amazing because that doesn't happen often. And I think for a person listening to this, a young dentist listening to this, and expecting to be the next David Moffet or the next Alan Stern or the next whoever, no. Understand that Dr. Moffat took these impressions and he used a fastidious technique that he learned how not to do, and then he adapted it. So if you can take a little piece of anything that David and I have talked about today and just make yourself a little bit better, mission accomplished. But be gracious to yourself. Be as kind to yourself as you are to your patients. Treat yourself with the same level of kindness. It's hard for us dentists to do that.
really important because dentists, and I don't like to categorize people as being dentists. And I learnt this phrase from my wife. We were talking about our son when he was very young. She said, he's not a naughty boy. He just does naughty things. And
Yes.
so I'm not a dentist. Dentistry is what I do. And I used to tell people that. Don't call me a dentist. Dentistry is what I do. In fact, one of my dentist friends from Staten Island used to say dentistry was his vehicle. He said, I'm actually in the marketing business. I market myself as a dentist, and dentistry is my vehicle. His
Mm-hmm.
parents, his parents ran, um, they ran a funeral home. So dentistry wasn't in his family either. But
Mm-hmm.
he married his wife at dental college. They're both dentists, and so there's a lot to be said about that as well. You know, somebody says, "Oh, they're a typical dentist." What I have found in my coaching career, Alan, is that I find that dentists turn to be a certain type of characteristic, and you've already mentioned it, that you feel that you've achieved, as a dentist, you've achieved something to get into dental school, and then you've achieved something by getting through dental school. The
Yes.
sad thing is that a lot of dentists then believe, well, I'm smart enough to do those two things. I'm smart enough to work anything out. I don't need any advice at all. And that's when they hit their glass ceiling that they don't even know they're hitting,
Yep.
and the world just passes them by. And whereas they should have said, you know, my best advice was when I thought, because I was looking at my practice, and I had empty spaces in my book, and people were saying, "Well, David, you're doing double what the average dentist is doing. You're going okay," and I'm going, "It's not perfect. It's I could be doing more dentistry. I could be seeing more patients because I have open time." And then I met a dentist who was doing double what I was doing. And I thought, he's no better dentist than me. He's no smarter person than me. What's he doing? You know the answer? He had a coach. I didn't have a coach. So that was find the coach. But again, just like dating, you go on a bad date, it's like, oh, I'm never dating anybody ever again. You find a bad coach. Well, there's got to be a better coach out there because coaches are working for some people. And so I was fortunate to find my second coach as the answer that I needed to push me into that customer service side of dentistry. Back to one last little thing that you said about being just that little bit better. You know Shep Hyken, the customer service guru from St. Louis, Missouri. He's also a former NSA president, National Speaking Association president in the United States. He says that you don't have to be 100% better. You just have to be 1% better at a number of things, and that will make a difference from being average. And it's just that you just have to be that little bit better. And you mentioned that, so
focus on your strengths and just keep improving them. Just keep improving, keep getting better, because learning is where we have not only a professional obligation, but it's our privilege, and it's what will make us not only materially successful, but not spiritually, if you would, successful, happy to be practicing, because you're learning new things and you're not stagnating in the past. How much of what we learned in dental school, David, is relevant today? Maybe some foundational principles, maybe. But I would say 90 to 95% of what they taught us in dental school, I wasn't doing at the end of my career.
I'm still wondering why I carried around a Winchester bottle for 24 hours collecting my own urine. What that had to do with dentistry, but still, there was no prize for the person who collected the most urine in 24 hours. You know, that was what got me. I thought that should have been an academic achievement.
Yeah, I don't get that one, but that's too much. That's TMI for me, David.
I think it had something to do with his. It was definitely in biochemistry. There was something in biochemistry about.
No, we didn't. We didn't have to play that game.
No, you were lucky. You were lucky.
In that regard, yeah.
But I used to catch the train to university, and so somebody caught me reading an anatomy textbook on the train. They go, "You're studying dentistry, aren't you?" Dead set giveaway. But so was all these people carrying around Winchester bottles, because they 1 liter bottles of that you had to urinate into.
I didn't have that privilege.
You see what you missed.
Yeah, I'll have to. You know what? I'm just gonna have to live my life without that.
Yeah,
I don't know how I'm going to do it, David.
So, Alan, the book, I can get a copy of the book, and our viewers can get a copy of the book from Amazon. Is that the easiest?
Absolutely. It's just Enjoy the Ride, Stern. It looks like this. There's a couple of books called Enjoy the Ride, but if you put my name in it, it's there, and I'm very proud of it. I've gotten some really nice comments about it, unsolicited nice comments, even now 4 years after it's been published, 5 years after it's been published. So it is time for another book. I wrote a little one that I haven't even marketed yet. This little thing. This is Destination U, Wit, Wisdom, and a Glass of WHINE wine. And I have 95 Alanisms, little smart, catchy phrases with some lessons behind them. And these are the first 20 Alanisms. But I haven't started marketing that one yet.
Wow. And nice handy little book that you can pull out anywhere and carry with you. And again, the fact that there's 20, that's probably enough for anybody anyway.
My wife will say it's more than enough. She's had enough of them. She's had enough after the first one.
Yeah. So tell me now that you've been settled, sold your practice, moved to Florida.
Yeah.
Florida scares me, and I've been there to many parts of Florida, but it just scares me because of the weather, the
Yeah.
tornadoes and and flooding and storms. And but you seem to have avoided them where you are, which is great.
Well, the catchphrase that I use, Florida, when we think about Florida, and, wherever your audience is, Florida is that, great big peninsula sticking out from the bottom of the United States. And the sexy places in Florida are coastal. We've all heard of Miami, Miami Beach, Delray Beach, Boca Raton, and on the other side, Tampa, Naples, all those things. Those coastal communities are at fairly significant risk. We are in a town called Ocala. We are in the central part of the state, in the northern part of the center of the state. So we're 100 miles inland from the west, more than that from the east. By the time a storm gets to us, it's downgraded. And we had two major storms here. Nothing happened. And what I tell people is that hurricanes look at Ocala like girls in high school used to look at me, not interested. Just skip on by. And it's a very, this town, this city, listen, you had your issues in Australia. I followed, you had a lot of fires down there.
Yeah.
The tragedy happening in California, the likes of which I don't think the world has seen. There are tornadoes in the central United States. There's floods all over the coastal United States, coastal anywhere. There's risk everywhere. And, another Alanism is pick your pleasure, pick your poison. New Jersey has its fair share of things. It's a coastal state. There's risk everywhere, David. So we picked our pleasure and we picked our poison.
Yeah, well, where we live, Alan, we were not far from the fires of December 2019.
Yeah,
they were close by, and we, I went up to Sydney to watch the cricket. And my wife said, "You better come back," and I stopped in at a grocery store on the way back and bought disposable nappies and stuck them in the tops of my downpipes and filled my gutters with water and just waited. Geographically, the fires to the north they were probably 40 or 50 miles away, but embers are the thing that fly. But to the south, the fire needed to come up an escarpment, and to the east, there was nothing to the east. But it was a scary time. The skies were just red and dusty, and the evenings that we spent at the home, just wondering whether we were actually on the Titanic. It was like, is this going to be our last night? My builder, when I renovated my home after that, I said, should we put a bunker in one of our paddocks? And he said, if there's a fire, he said, just get in your car and get out of there. He said, it's all material stuff. As long as you're insured, you can rebuild.
Yeah. So, I remember within 2 years of my retirement, there were huge fires in Canada, and the smoke we had to wear a mask outside. The smoke from Canada was coming down as far as New Jersey. And that's a long way. Security is a myth, David. There is no such thing. There is no such thing.
Well, my first trips to the United States, I was terrified of the West Coast and the risk of earthquake.
Yes. Yep.
You live on that fault line. That's a fault line. What's going to happen if it cracks? But
they're moving there anyway. But
people just keep moving there. Yeah.
Fire is.
I'm glad the time down to Florida has been good for you. And as you mentioned, the primary driver was you don't like the cold, and snow's great until you've got to shovel it.
That's right.
So
We're very content. We're reaping the reward. We live a quiet life. I travel around a little bit. I do some speaking. I do some coaching. I do some writing. And it's really I think the reward at the end of my dental career has been nothing less than miraculous. And I would like people to hear my story, not to want to be me, but to take a little bit of inspiration and center yourself on who you are and really let that guide your dental career and let it guide your life. Your core values are unique to you. And if you can incorporate them into your dental career, you're going to have a career that's minimal stress, maximal reward. And at the end of the day, man, I'm telling you, my life is very imperfect, but it's pretty good. It's really good.
yeah, I think you've summed it up pretty well there. I've always thought that being a practice owner is a gift, and if you do it right, you can have a very very comfortable life if you do it right. And the issue is that a lot of people think that they're doing it right, and they could be doing it better with a little bit of advice. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the hurdle that we have as previous successful dentists, um, uh, to teach people from our experience that there is a better way, and
Yes.
giving them that opportunity to learn that better way and then turn their practice into a better practice. Because it is, as you said, the final 10 years of your practice were far more comfortable once you knew that you were doing
Yep.
things without the struggle.
Yep. Yep. And, the lesson of the story of your career, David, I think you have to understand that if you are going in the wrong direction, you don't need to cling to a coach who's not guiding you consistently with what you want. Don't be afraid to make a change. Don't be afraid. If you know you need a change, make it. Don't
Yeah.
hesitate. Make the change.
I, I saw a thread yesterday. You probably saw it too. When do you know is the right time to dismiss an employee? And the number one answer that people said, as soon as the thought enters your head. Um, and 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 I've known dentists who have hung on to bad staff members, toxic staff members for 10, 15 years. And that's just crazy. But you're right. Knowing when is the time to cut your losses, regroup,
Yep.
redirect. Um,
Yep.
my speaking friend, Karen Jacobson, who I met at an SCN conference, did you meet her?
I have
Or is
not
that
met you. No.
so? She's Australian. She's from Mackay, and she was a guest at an SCN. She was the guest speaker. Um, she's the Australian voice of Siri, and
I know who she is.
yeah, and so
Yes.
she just says, it's a
In
recalculate.
fact, she's in my bedroom.
she's in your car. She's the
Yeah.
only. She says she's the
Yeah.
only woman that men actually take directions from, but her direction is recalculate, and that's it. When you take a wrong turn, she's going to tell you how to get back into
Mhm.
that right way. And I think that's what we've got to do. Recognize that when there is something wrong in our office, the answer is nearby. We've just got to know where to source that answer. And so, like
Mhm.
when arthritis terminated my practicing career, people just kept coming to me and saying, David, can you tell me how you did that with your practice? So it was a logical step to just go into that practice management side of dentistry and give
Mhm.
back to the profession, to those who
Yes.
seek your knowledge and seek your guidance. And it's quite pleasurable in being able to do that. And it gives you that extra career, um,
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
opposed to
It's our
having one.
obligation. It's our privilege.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
Alan, Thank you for being a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. If people want to get your book, they can find it on Amazon. How can they get in touch with you privately?
Let me count the ways. There are two really good ones. One, my Facebook page is called Better, Richer, Stronger. And you could email me, you could message me through there, or you could email me at Alan, ALAN, at betterricherstronger.com. Nice. And finally, I will sit down with you. I'll spend a half hour with you. I'll listen, and I'll see if I can offer some guidance and put you in a good direction. I'll do that for anybody.
Excellent. Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure chatting. I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate you being a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. It's been a privilege.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.